Hey, welcome to this week's edition of M3. Hey, I'm back in the cemetery again, and we're still on the topic of forgiveness. Specifically today, I want to talk about family forgiveness. I had to kind of get low in order for you to see the images and what's behind me. And forgiveness is like that sometimes. We have to get low and we have to humble ourselves if we're going to confront the need to forgive uh, or the need to be forgiven. So I'm here, and right behind me is my mother's, her mother and father and sister, their final resting place. I chose to come here, and the reason why I did is because I can't expect any of you that are listening to contemplate the process of forgiveness if I'm unwilling to share my personal experiences. My mother worked as an accountant for most of her life. And as I was preparing for today's session, I thought to myself, all of us, we've all been accountants. At some point in our lives, we've kept records on someone, or someone has been keeping a record on us. And as I thought about this, I thought about one of the final things that Jesus said as he gave up his humanity as he was dying on the cross. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And many times, people that we are expecting forgiveness from, or those that are seeking forgiveness from us, um, they don't do so because when they did whatever it was to offend us, uh, they didn't know the harm that they were causing. They didn't know what their words and their actions were going to do to bring harm to someone. In other words, just like Jesus said, they did not know what they were doing. In its entirety, forgiveness or the lack thereof, it can be devastating for families, but especially for young children. When adults, when we fail to acknowledge, pardon me, the hurt that we may have caused to our families, what seems like rebellion from a child could be uh, an act of unforgiveness, something that they need, something that they're seeking. And when that's not addressed, it can follow our children, as it has with some of us, into adulthood. For the majority of my life, my mother and I had a very problematic relationship. During her last 8 years on this earth, she just died 5 months ago. My wife and I cared for her during her final years. But it was during that time that I realized that I needed to seek her forgiveness. And although she never asked me directly to forgive her, she didn't have to. You see, sometimes forgiveness, it doesn't look like what we expect. Sometimes we want to hear the words. We want people to request, our forgiveness. And sometimes, truth be told, we want them to beg for it. Instead, we should be considering and looking at a person's actions and what they're doing. Because as we well know, words can be deceiving. For me, in the final 2 weeks of my mother's life, they were the most joyful moments that we spent throughout my lifetime. 'Cause we both know there was a need. We both knew, pardon me, there was a need for forgiveness. And that's what the power of forgiveness does. It allows us to have those moments of joy. We can experience that again when we make a decision to forgive. So here's the final word. We've all heard the phrase, and I'm talking about family forgiveness here. We've all heard the phrase family secrets, right? But concealing information, and as we attempt to disguise it in the form of protecting someone, that's not forgiveness. All that does is extend the pain of unforgiveness. So, here are three things before I go. Find the courage to speak the truth of what harms were done or what needs to be healed. Then have the heart to receive that. Because when people come to us and seeking our forgiveness, or we go to them, our hearts need to be prepared. This entire thing is a process. And then finally, funny, I'm standing here in the cemetery, have the funeral, and you may need to have more than one. And by that, I mean bury the past hurt as much as you can. Bury those things that are preventing forgiveness. Listen, forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, but it can help relieve some of the pain that we've been dealing with throughout the course of our lifetime. Forgiveness is a process. Give it time. but don't waste time. Take the chance while you have it to forgive. This has been your midweek micro message. We'll see you next week.